Okay, I'd like to start by opening a public hearing for the proposed $15,000 donation from the Byrne Foundation for the Lebanon High School Model UN. So I'd like to open up any public comment on the public hearing or on the donation. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask or add? Okay, so we'll close the public hearing on the donation and we will return to it at a later time in the meeting. Okay, so I'll call to order the school board meeting. Hold on. Okay, great. Sorry, just want to make sure we had a minute taker. I'd like to call the Lebanon School Board meeting to order. Could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Public comment will occur during the public comment portion of the meeting in a few minutes and is done via raising your hand remotely or in person. During public comment, once acknowledged, please state your name and ward so that it can be included in the minutes, and please limit your time to 3 minutes. Public comment is governed by board policy BEDH. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I would suggest if we could move up new business 11A up after the consent agenda.
Okay. Are there any objections to that? Okay, great. Let's go ahead and do that. Do you want to do all 3 of the new businesses up at the?
Sure.
Yeah, actually, let's move all 3. We'll move 11A, B, and C up. Thank you. Keep them all together. All right.
Can I just ask for clarification?
Yes.
Is the tabled, that's a new item on our agenda, is that just so that we can continue to track what we've tabled?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we're going to...
Nope.
Okay.
Yes, good question. We were going to come to it, but that's a good question. Okay, let's see. We'll like to open up public comment. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to make a comment? I see none. Is there anyone online?
There's no one online.
Okay. All right. We will close public comment for now and return to it at the end of the meeting.
Do we have a student here?
She's here. She's next.
Oh, okay. I didn't see it. I didn't see it on the
Wendy.
I was like, where is that?
All
I don't see
right.
it.
All right. We're proceeding to the student report. We have Nora Burns with us today, who's going to give us a report.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, so first off, introductions. I'm Nora Burns. I'm a junior at Lebanon High School. I've been elected currently as the 2023-2024 student representative. I'm also new to the district as of earlier last year, so that's a good experience for me too. So my job is the ears and eyes of the school, and I've already had a lot of students come to me to just tell me things about Lebanon that they'd like me to express to the board. So first off, in student life, we had this past Saturday homecoming, and that was a big hit. I sadly wasn't here last year to experience homecoming, but compared to last year, it was much better this year. We also had a DJ who is on the STUCO member committee, so he was there and he was very good. It was a smooth cleanup, all of that went well. For STUCO, we're currently talking about the day of work. We're preparing that. And if you guys are interested in participating as one of the people to sign up and have students volunteer to go and help with whatever you need, we'd love that. There's a new student member, new senior member, Sam Trussell, who recently was added to the student council. And we also have a new to district member, Izzy, who has been added this past week. This Friday, we have the pep rally that we've been getting together. We've been preparing the works and finalizing the activities. So that should be very fun. And then we have the bonfire later that night, which is very big. And then, yeah, we are currently working on student advisory board for the superintendent. We have a lot of participants who are looking forward to the board running. So.
Great. Does anyone have any questions for Nora? Are you going to the bonfire?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
I look forward to it.
Great. Thank you. That was really helpful and really thorough. Appreciate it. All right. Moving on to correspondence. We have no correspondence. Thank you, Mary. And that will take us to the consent agenda. So we need a motion to approve the public minutes from the September 13th, 2023 meeting.
Make a motion to approve the public minutes from the September 13th, 2023 meeting.
Okay, motion by MJ, seconded by Wendy. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions? Yes, Jessica?
Just the item 11, and then actually subsequent items, the vote is listed as 8 and 1, and I was not present, so it should be 7 and 0 and 1, and then same thing on the adjournment vote, I was not present, so it should be 8 and 0, 0.
And there was that motion in 11, and then the motion in 14, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other corrections? No? Okay. So because we're recording this, board members, if you speak into your mic, it's going to be easier for her to hear all of us, so just make sure you've got your mics close. Thank you. All right. So, yes, MJ.
I guess on that token, I just looked and under 9, all the motions are 10 to 0. So I guess those should probably be 9 to 0.
Yeah, so that's 10B and 10C and D.
All of the 10s,
All of
I
the
think.
10s. Okay.
So, just counting people, so on 6B then, it says 502. Would there have been 8 of us present at that time?
I think there would have been.
On 6,
Or 9 of us?
9 of us.
However many of them.
I think that Lisa had abstained, right? Okay, so were there 2 abstentions? Oh, never mind, it already says that.
So it should be 6, because there were 9 of
7.
us. Right, 7.
No, yeah.
We can't add. 702, because there were 9 of us in attendance, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. This is why they didn't call us to do the math. All right. Excellent. Any other corrections? No? Okay. All right, so we have a motion to approve the public minutes as amended from September 13th, 2023. All those in favor? All right, that's going to be 600. All right, we have no nominations, resignations. I don't think so, so we can just delete that. And then we'll move down to 11A, B, and C.
11A. Tonight, I would like to present 2 letters of accommodation, one to Athletic Director Mike Stone and one to Principal Ian Smith. As we embark on another academic year at Lebanon High School, we want to extend our sincere congratulations to you, our dedicated faculty and staff, and our outstanding student athletes on a remarkable achievement for the 22-23 school year. Lebanon High School's recognition with the Award of Excellence for exemplary display of sportsmanship, ethics, and integrity, along with the NHAA Runner-Up Sportsmanship Award, is a testament to the values and principles withheld in this community. We are thrilled to see our athletes return to the field, court, and track. The pride that they bring to our school through their dedication in sportsmanship is commendable. Winning undoubtedly is a significant aspect of competitive sports, but it's really just one component. Equally important, if not so more, is how our athletes conduct themselves in victory and defeat. Their commitment to sportsmanship, integrity, and ethics reflect positively on our school and prepares them for success beyond their schooling years. As we look forward to additional seasons of spirited competition and personal growth, we encourage you, our fellow educators, parents, and community members, to come out and support our student athletes. Their hard work, discipline, and sportsmanship serve as a source for inspiration for all of us. Once again, congratulations to Lebanon High School athletes, Athletic Director Mike Stone, and Principal Smith on these well-deserved accolades, and thank you for your tireless efforts on behalf of the students of the Lebanon School District. We are proud to be part of a community that strongly emphasizes values that extend far beyond the classroom and athletic field.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add? Congratulations. Thank you both, and everyone who's involved in the athletic teams. We appreciate that. Okay, we're having discussion and action. Acknowledge George and Dominique Lightbody for the LHS principal donation of $2,500. Do we have any additional information about that?
We do not. It is a $2,500 donation to be used at the principal discretion, ideally helping single parents with resources to make their children's life better.
It's a worthy cause. I appreciate that. Do you have anything you want to add something? Go ahead.
So very quickly, I guess I'd like to publicly thank the lay bodies. They've been giving this amount of money. Actually, I think it's a little more this year for the last eight years. So their recognition of the good work that this district does for kids and families who need it is appreciated, and certainly not expected, but much appreciated. So thank you, lay bodies.
Thank you. And yes, we'd like to thank them as well. Can I get a motion to accept the donation?
I'll make a motion to accept the donation from George and Dominique Lightbody for the Lebanon High School principal donation of $2,500.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
All right, seconded by Wendy. Any additional? I know. Any additional information? Okay. All those in favor? All right, 6-0-0. All right, and that moves on to our next item: discussion and action accepting the $15,000 donation from the Byrne Foundation for LHS Model UN.
This donation will allow 20 students and 3 chaperones to attend the conference in New York City. So we want to thank the Byrne Foundation for the generous support over 8 years supporting the Lebanon School District students.
Great, thank you. Any additional comments?
Does that allow for all of them, or do we need additional money? Or do they just select?
It looks like the total conference comes out to be about 17,000. So
It's almost all of them.
yeah.
So if I'm going to thank the lay bodies who are certainly deserving of it, I'm certainly going to thank Dorothy Byrne and the Byrne Foundation, who annually just help us incredibly be able to do things we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So thank you, Dorothy. I can't imagine you're listening tonight, but you might be. But it's, yeah, without her help, it's an entirely different experience for our kids, and some kids might not be able to go, and that's the reality. So.
Yeah, to answer your question, yes, with what we have budgeted, that'll cover everything.
Perfect.
Thank you. All right, so, and we also thank the Byrne Foundation, as always, for their generosity. Our students appreciate it, as does the board. All right, so we have a motion to accept the $15,000.
No, we need to have
Oh, we
a
need to have a
motion.
motion? Sorry, we need a motion to accept the $15,000 donation.
So I will make a motion to accept the $15,000 donation from the Byrne Foundation for the Lebanon High School Model UN.
I'll second it.
All right, motion by MJ, seconded by Mary. Any additional information or discussion? All right, all those in favor? All right, 6 in favor, 6-0-0. All right, thank you all. Which leads us to, and our next item on the agenda is our presentation by Miranda Collins, social worker, district social worker, and Greg Parthum, student resource officer.
Is this mic on?
Miranda, can you see if that microphone is on? Miranda,
Is the microphone on?
I don't know.
talk into it. Talk into it.
Hello?
Okay, yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Miranda Collins. I am the district social worker. I met some of you last year when I presented. I have a lot more data this time, not just kind of my thoughts. So, and then
Greg Parthum, the district's school and Lebanon Police Department's school resource officer. Thank you for having us tonight. Nice to see you.
So we're going to start I'm going to go through the data that I gathered of students and the stuff that I did this year, and then Greg is going to talk about some of the stuff he did, and then what we did together. So total this year, I served about 95 students. Last year, sorry. And it was pretty evenly distributed throughout the schools. Hanover Street had a couple more students, but for the most part, I served all the schools equally. Grade level wise, there was kind of a first grade. There's a few more, first and second, and then again in 8th grade. But I hit every grade level and all areas. So primarily males, but yeah, not much to say about that. Interestingly enough, most of the students that I saw were gen ed, not special ed. I think our special ed team does a really great job of wrapping around our kids. So they have those additional resources, and families are really well connected with their special educators. So I think that tends to be the main point of contact for them. Most families were referred to me because there was an identified need for family support. The way it's listed in here as family support is as opposed to one of the other options is just because sometimes when the referral came to me, whoever was referring didn't necessarily know what the support needed to be. They just identified a need. So if they did have something specific they wanted me to intervene on, those are kind of the other things. So that's how that's broken down. But most of my work was with family support and attendance. So this is just kind of breaking down who referred them to me. Most of the time it came from each building calls it something different, but our kind of student support team meetings, or mental health team meeting, or from the school counselor. So, yeah. And then this is kind of the meat of my data. I provided 670 services for the whole year. I will add that I didn't keep tracking my data in this way until December. So from July to November, the data that I collected was just about referrals. So which kids were referred to me and why. I didn't track the individual services I provided to them because I wasn't using this system and I didn't want to create false data. So the only things that were listed from July to November were the referrals to me and why, and then any home visits I provided because those were documented differently and I could clearly pinpoint when I did them, so I filled those in. So just something to know there. Most of my work, the family communication, outreach with the families, meeting with them, connecting them with outside referrals, did a lot of communication with staff, and so, I was looking at this and changed how I kept data this coming year, but our staff communication, that could be like the referrals to me, so that initial contact, I think is making up a lot of that staff communication. This year I did change that, so it will be separate things. And then my communication with outside services, because my job is really to connect the families to all the things that they need. Did some intervention with students who were struggling with suicidality, so assessing them and connecting them with what they needed. And the meat of my work with Greg is our home visits that we did together. So that's kind of all those things. Some of the background stuff that I did this year, really building relationships with our area agencies. So I have contacts at all of the places listed. I've worked on a few committees. I attended the All Together Coalition, and most recently the Early Childhood Service Delivery Integration Network, which is a community organization through the Greater Upper Valley Integrated Services Team that is working to integrate our services so our families have the best supports and the easiest transition and access to services. So, yeah. Some of the kind of procedural work that I worked on is updating our attendance procedures. So making sure that we are tracking attendance and connecting with families in a timely manner to prevent extended absences and getting into the late into the school year and having a lot of absences and trying to be proactive. So worked with our admin to create a procedure that is bi-weekly attendance meetings where we run our attendance reports, have a conversation about which kids are absent and what services we can provide them and how to support them best. The other thing I did this year was to update our risk assessment procedure for students who were suicidal. I created new forms for tracking that and provided updated forms that go to parents if there is a risk, so they have a one-pager about where all their resources are and what they can do and what we're asking them to do before a student returns. I also provided trainings during staff meetings for staff about the procedures they should be following if they have an interaction with a kid who expresses suicidality or homicidality and how they should handle that. And then the thing that Greg and I have been working on this year, nationally, there's a movement to have what we call threat assessment teams. These are teams of school staff who have concerns about a student where there might be risk of harm to the district, to the school, to school shootings, but also just in general, the point of the threat assessment is to have a big picture of what's going on for a kid and identify what resources we need to put in place to prevent any sort of risk for other students or the student themselves. So Greg and I have been looking into best practices around that. We had a meeting with the Secret Service. Yep. The Secret Service has a threat assessment, I don't know what word I'm looking for. Threat.
Collaborate with different.
Yeah, they have someone who collaborates with schools and area organizations to create these plans. So we've been identifying what steps we need to take. We're still in the early processes of that, but we did a lot of research and kind of planning to start moving forward with that. And then I did add one slide about what this year has looked like. So this I created last Wednesday. And so as of last week, I had seen 28 students and provided 102 services. When I updated this today, between Wednesday and today, I have now provided 198 services and seen 39 students. So in the last few days, I've seen quite an increase in my caseload and the services I need to provide to students. So, any questions for me before I?
Yeah, we'll have some questions for you first, and we'll probably have some questions after. But if anybody has questions for Miranda right now, go ahead, MJ.
So I guess I have a question. So just in a week, you got about 11 more cases. So do some fall off, or you're now following this 39 for this entire school year and beyond?
So it ebbs and flows. Sometimes there are more services that are needed in a short period of time, but I always need to follow back up and provide after services. The thing that I found this year and the end of last year is that because I'm covering 4 schools, I am usually having to deal with the crises and the immediate intervention things that are needed, and I don't have as much ability to provide effective follow-up care that I wish I could. But I'm always dealing with the next crises. So, yes, in some ways, that kid isn't needing something directly right then, but best care would be to continue having those supports, and it gets a little tricky.
Thank you for this. And excuse me, I'm always curious when I look at numbers, particularly because I didn't see your presentation last year and I don't have a lot of context for it. What would you like for us to take away from this data? What does this tell you? Is this a lot? Is this a little? How would you kind of contextualize what's in here in terms of the numbers, especially for those of us who are new to the board?
Yeah, so it is a lot. The current School Social Work Association of America recommends one social worker for every 250 students. So I'm covering a little over 1,600. I do feel that the beginning of last year, being new, things kind of were slow going, and we were all figuring out how to work together with all the different schools and what gets referred to me and what doesn't, and kind of how we could work together. And I feel like this year starting, they know who I am, and so my referrals are way higher these first few weeks than they were last year. And I don't necessarily see that decreasing. I feel like our kids they have needs, our families have needs, and in general, our community resources, everyone's short-staffed everywhere. And so families are feeling really kind of stuck where they aren't getting all the resources they need. And so it ends up falling back on the schools a bit, like how do we keep them together until they can get those resources?
I have two questions. What is the average length of time that you work with a student? Not like minutes in a day, but like how long in the school year do you typically? And is that something that we can track?
That's not something I tracked, so I will say that. I don't know if there is an average. The tricky thing is being the one social worker and attending all the meetings. They might not necessarily need something from me in that moment, but I'm still keeping tabs all year to figure out when I need to step back in. And so
once you're on board with a student, you tend to sort of stay. At what point do you say, oh, things are fine?
when the schools stop having concerns.
Okay.
It really is dependent on every family and every situation, so it's hard. There are definitely families who have reached out and they had one need and we address it and that's it. But for the most part, that's not my case.
It's more of an ongoing contact. And any sense of what's driving the need for services in our elementary school students compared to our middle and high school?
I think our elementary students, I don't really know. I could take lots of guesses, but I think our elementary teachers are really in tune with their kids. They have them all day. So they are potentially picking up on things where at the middle and high school levels, they're going between classes. It could be just that age group. COVID could be impacting it. Those are kids who were younger during COVID, and so their school years have been completely different every year. But I would say the elementary kids, I tend to notice they're not the ones that I'm necessarily staying with super long term. I'm keeping tabs and figuring out what they need, but the middle and high school kids are the kids that I tend to be more more involved in, if that makes sense. The elementary families have access to some services, early intervention services and things that the middle and high school does not.
And do you track any of this data by, like, school? Not, I mean, or just by elementary, middle, high school, as far as like some of the services that they're needing? So, for instance, do we see depression, suicidal kinds of things in our elementary students, or is that?
Yes, we are seeing kids at the younger levels who are dealing with suicidal thoughts. I can think of at least 2 occasions where we've had to call mobile crisis to the elementary schools. I can think of, I don't know, 10, 20 that I've been called to assess a kid who is suicidal at the elementary level.
Did you have a question, Mary?
No.
Okay, good. I have a couple of questions. Sorry, Jessica. The first is, I wrote them on the individual papers, so now I have to go back and find them. The biweekly meetings that you're having, are those with admin and or student support services, or all of the above, or who are those meetings with?
So they're with the administration. Whoever they've decided is the attendance team. So at the high school level, we have kind of included it in their student support team meeting. I've had a few meetings with Colin separately from that meeting to check in about things at the elementary level. Been meeting with Leah and Katie and talking about things. At the middle school level, theirs is the most formal attendance meeting, and it's Colleen, the 2 school counselors, and myself. So.
Okay. And then this Greater Upper Valley Integrated Services Team, so is that using, integrating other schools as well, or is it, who is that team?
So there's a lot of people on the team. So since it's the Upper Valley, it's Vermont and New Hampshire. It's not just New Hampshire. The Hartford social worker is sitting on that committee now as well. I invited her to it. I was actually asked to present by Waypoint, their family services coordinator. I connected with her because the way Waypoint services were set up, I would call the number and they would tell me, we don't provide that service in Lebanon. But I have like people telling me they do, and so I outreached and had a direct meeting, and she said, I think it would be really helpful to have your input and what you're seeing as a school involved in this coalition. So I've only attended 3 meetings, and we're just starting. So I know there's someone from the Family Place, their Waypoint, Vermont Department of Health is there. We're trying to get a DHMC social worker there. So there's a lot of people, and I honestly don't know all their names. So
No, that's fine. That's helpful though. And then the last question I had was, you said that the special education teams, you felt like that the wraparound services, and I'm assuming this is from K-12, right, are significant, and so therefore that's the point of contact that people are having. Are the special ed team contacts themselves reaching out to you to sort of coordinate services, or how does that work?
So it tends to come from the special educator to the student support team, which then comes to me. So yes and no, and then depending on the situation, I would connect directly with that case manager and figure out what is needed, or directly with the family.
Okay, great.
So I do, like, I'm invited to IEP meetings and things where they know that there's a need and ask me to be there to support. So I appreciate our special ed team because they're like, Miranda, we need you at this meeting. And so I leave it up to them that if they feel that my support is needed.
Okay. Jessica, you had another follow-up?
So I'm hoping you can describe to me, I was very helpful when you mentioned that the Social Workers of America, or whatever the organization was, you said they recommend this. That was very helpful. Can you describe to me what sort of an ideal situation is for, in terms of how services are provided, kind of how handoffs work to other sort of organizations, or whether things, can you describe to me a little bit more about sort of like how social work interacts, of the kind that you're describing, sort of interacts with our schools, and perhaps what a platonic ideal of that would look like?
So there's kind of
I will infer what I will make inferences, but if you can describe that would be very helpful. Thank you.
So there can be I like to describe it as two prongs of social work, like the community outreach and the connecting with services, but also social workers are trained therapists. So right now, my bucket is all in the connecting with the resources and connecting with the families and doing the home visits. In an ideal world, if we had a social worker in every building, they could be providing some mental health services to our kids while providing the wraparound care to families, and having a point of contact who could connect on all levels with a family and support them in that way. So right now, a lot of my work is that crisis intervention, connecting them with what they need and kind of moving on to the next person, where ideally it would be, and I would love to be able to, every week follow up with that family and do things, but there is a lot of kids and a lot of needs, so.
And just, thank you, that's helpful. And I realize we also have school counselors or I don't know how many counselors we have, and we have how many counselors and how many psychologists do we have?
So we have one school counselor in both elementary schools.
Okay.
And a school psychologist in both elementary schools.
Okay.
The middle school, there's 2 school counselors, 1 school psychologist, and a student assistance provider.
Okay.
And then at the high school, there are 4 counselors, the school psychologist, and the SAP.
Okay. And so those are obviously also people who are trained therapists. And so the advantage of having a social worker also be able, have the time in their schedule to do the sort of therapy aspect as well I won't put words into your mouth, I'll listen to yours.
Yes. I mean, in an ideal world, that wraparound care, there's someone who can do the home visits, who can connect with all the people. So,
Amy's going to
So I just
clarify.
want to clarify, our guidance counselors, they do have masters in guidance
Yes.
counseling, college and career counseling, and they can provide counseling. Our SAPs are licensed mental health counselors. We do have a vacancy at the high school, which we are looking to find, but we also contract out for mental health counseling too within
yes.
the
Oh,
school.
I
So-
forgot Deer Creek.
Yeah.
So we have
We have
we do
pretty
have-
much student service budget in that way, that to make sure those services are being provided as well. So, and with the 4 psychologists, I believe we have 1 vacant. That is a great resource for the Lebanon School District to have 1 in each building. So I want to commend the district for making that investment.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I guess that was just kind of to dovetail on it. You said that, with your 2 buckets, and one would be counseling more. So I guess if you were to counsel more, then do you envision we would back off on our contracted mental health? Because don't we have contracted mental health services for those students that need it? Or do you think that there are some above and beyond that are falling through the cracks because we don't have enough contract services coming in?
I'd have to get those exact numbers from the schools themselves. I know right now with high school being that down their SAP, that has been our main priority to get them served. So because that therapy piece with that licensed mental health counselor is kind of that advanced level of service.
So of the services that you provide, do you feel like we're meeting the need, or are there needs or services that are going uncovered? So do we have people within our district that would refer more kids if we had more of you? Or do you feel like we're covering things well?
I think we're somewhere in the middle. I do think we're able to provide our heavy hitter kids who need the full wraparound supports. I do feel with the data that I presented, that just the increase in the services, that I'm not going to be able to do it all. And so that's kind of like yes and no. I do think that the school counselors do a lot that a social worker could be providing, and I think this year of learning how we all interact, they held a lot of things that that they should have referred to me. And so I think, so last year that happened, and I think what I'm seeing this year is now that we've kind of figured out how I can be a support, they're like, here's the situation. So I think the data this year is going to be much higher than last year.
So in thinking about if we were to add, hypothetical, like we can add social workers, because of the numbers, would you say that each of our elementary school would benefit from, like, do you think one person could cover the elementary schools and one person can cover middle high school, or do we really have, is the need that great at each of our elementary schools that they would benefit from? Hard to know. Do you have an opinion?
I think that even one additional social worker to share the load would be very beneficial. If I'm talking an ideal world, I would love one at every school to provide more support, but I think even just one additional person would be helpful.
I think we want to be clear too, is when you put the social worker position in, was it to coordinate services, or is that mental health counseling piece? And then to be able to look to see that from when, I don't know when this position was designed, because they are really kind of that two different tracks for the social work. And then, we do have the SAP person as well. And then there's a contracted therapist in 3 of our schools right now, and I know our schools put some in their budget to continue those services as well.
But do you know, so I don't think we knew when we put this position in, there wasn't really clarity around.
Okay.
But I think the idea was that we had enough mental health care providers. So I think it was a lot of the services kind of stuff was initial. So I guess the question is, if we feel like we're pretty good with mental health services aside from the open positions that we know, do we feel like there's still a need for somebody to connect with services and sort of play the exact role that Miranda's already doing?
Yeah, I think that would be something that our leadership team could talk about, and looking at that design, whether if we add additional person to split elementary, then middle and high school, and to look at the exact hours too. So right now, like for her current school year, there's 10 contact students between the middle and high school, Mount Leb with 3, and Hanover Street with 5. 2 is one of the things, is the same family, right? Like having multiple kids and stuff. So I think we need to dig deeper within our data to kind of look to see where those trends are. And I know with the mental health stuff, a lot of the challenges is that the mental health centers are down-staffed as well. So kids are waiting for those mental health services, and waiting in the emergency room to get evaluated and things like that.
Can I just kind of tag on that, though? It would be also helpful, I think, if you, as you evaluate, to say, yes, it'd be great to have a social worker to connect with more services, but then what's the capacity of the services out in the community to even accept more kids? Because I think it's great to add more capacity on our end, but then if you have a bolus on the other end that can't accept it, are we really doing a service to our children? So that would be a helpful kind of thing to know too.
Okay. All right, we're going to stop with Miranda's interrogation just for a minute. You've done a great job.
Learning.
And then we'll move over to Greg's part of the presentation.
Good job, Miranda. Okay, so the data, you may have already seen it, but it's a little bit different than Miranda's. So we wanted to use the same formatting so that it would be similar and kind of comparable to a certain extent. But I wasn't keeping it at all last year. I actually adopted her platform. In addition, I also have to keep the police, you know, the way we do our record keeping. So I went back through all the calls of service that I took last year and then took that data and then put it into the system she was using, so that we could at least have it displayed similarly. So it's not, there's some data that's not there. Obviously, you know, the IEP, special ed stuff, that wouldn't apply to me anyway. But you'll see there's some other stuff that won't be that she was able to show demographic-wise that I didn't have. So I left this chart in here. I noticed after the fact, and I tried to change it a couple times, and it wasn't working based on the way that the system is formatted, but in order to make the pie chart. But I think the numbers show those are the calls for service that I had at each and every school. The reason Hanover Street School, this is what I wanted to correct, looks like this huge area is because, as many of you may know, I was helping to cover the crosswalk last year. So about 90 of those calls for service you can actually remove from the Hanover Street School side. It wasn't that bad.
I was wondering.
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
Yeah. So it's actually it's almost identical to Mount Lebanon percentage-wise, but that would have obviously changed the other percentages too. I just couldn't get it to work in time. Gender-wise, like Miranda, predominantly males, about 60-40%, 60 male, 40 female. As best I could do with the tracking and my knowledge, the only thing that with the police department, we do it slightly different. When we document a race, it's a race, then a gender, and then if it's Hispanic or, you know, non-Hispanic. So it's kind of all, it doesn't necessarily, well, the information may or may not have been there depending on the circumstances, but it would have been too much for me to go back to in the amount of time I had. So I did the best I could. And, you know, you take with it what you want, but it's tricky. You know, we have only, I think, a couple Pacific Islanders in our school district last year. So when you have an interaction, a formal interaction with one of them, obviously that, it doesn't show here on the chart, but it's that light blue area. And it looks, you know, that'd be a high interaction for that population, but obviously there's only two of them. So that's that data. We can come back if you have questions. This is the pie chart that shows all the different calls for services that I took relating to the school district when I was working as the school resource officer. And the pie chart was nice because it automatically eliminated the crosswalk details I did. So this is actually the percentages without that. You know, juvenile problems was the highest. Assist school district, and I can explain those a little bit further, and I will again at the end when I talk about our numbers and how we interacted. But school resource is always one that comes up, like what exactly is that? And that's sort of the fallback, I guess, that if it doesn't fit anywhere else, that's kind of where it's going. But to kind of define it a little bit for you, it could be anything from like I have to call a parent for some reason and give them advice related to maybe there's diversion that's being assigned to that child, or they have questions about the law. It could be counseling students about the law so that they understand, because sometimes kids haven't quite gone to the point, maybe they're threatening to fight someone or beat somebody up, and the district's tried talking to them, or the school staff have tried changing that behavior, but it continues. Then they might say, okay, well, we've talked to parents, we've got the okay, we'll bring in Officer Parthum, we can talk to the child as well, and kind of explain, this is what could happen if you continue doing this behavior. You know, we want to change it now before you become an adult. So there's been no crime committed, but I'm offering services. It could be, you know, talking again to parents about domestic violence situations, which may not be necessarily related to something Miranda would cover, but it would be, again, educating them about the resource wise and other, you know, court protective orders they could have. And then also, you know, it's a lot of rapport building. I do different things with different students. I get into classrooms. If the teacher asks me to come and talk about a certain subject, then I'll probably call a school resource call. We don't have a teacher call or like a, you know, teaching call. So it could be anything, like for example, I work with a student right now in Hanover Street School who just is all about police for whatever reason. I think his father's actually a police officer. But we're using that love of his to kind of build a relationship with me, because it's an automatic in, and then turning that into, this is why it's important. If you want to be a police officer or anything else when you grow up, this is why it's important to learn, to listen to your teacher, to follow the rules, because that's what that child needs guidance in. So sometimes it's just, I'm a good connector, or I'm another male that maybe the elementary schools don't have a lot of males, so I'm going to be that sort of male role model. With, again, we get parent permission and everything. This slide just shows the numbers for what you just saw on the pie chart. Pretty self-explanatory, sort of the same thing. This says, I broke it down a little bit more. So those are calls for service, and then we have things that will result, incidents that will result in significant investigations. So I wanted to lay those out for you guys as well. So you can see we had adult arrests or court referrals, which we had 4 last year. We had 7 juvenile petitions, which is basically a juvenile arrest. We call them juvenile petitions. Every single one of those we diverted to the juvenile diversion program, which I work very closely with them. And all 7 of those students, they actually follow up with me, which is great, and our prosecutor, and all 7 of those students completed it. So there was never any court involvement, official court involvement. As far as the rest data, just to explain that a little bit more, so one of them was an adult, so 18 or older, student who violated orders of, that's the easiest way to say it, there was bail conditions. There had been an arrest made, they violated the bail conditions, so that resulted in an arrest. None of these were, really present at school arresting a student or anything like that. This is something we call up, work with the parents, get the child to come up to the police department. That one was a full processing. The adult non-student arrests were related to something that a high school student shared with a counselor and then shared with me, and that ended up resulting in a non-student community member being arrested for sexual assault and felonious sexual assault that had been related to our student body. The operating without a license, so that is a motor vehicle violation. Those are classified as adult violations. They fall under adult, not juvenile, even though it was a juvenile student involved. That particular individual had actually already been diverted for that, because we can divert adult criminal actions as well. And the behavior was continuing, and this was something that we felt had to go to the next step. And if we do take that next step, there is actually another process where juvenile probation officer comes in, meets with the family, does a full-on evaluation, and this determines whether or not they think we should take it to diversion or court. So there's another assessment done as well. And then that last one was for possession of vape products, which is under the tobacco law. That's an adult charge for anyone over 12. Needless to say, that family, for other reasons, had already declined diversion, interacting with diversion in their services, but also that student was warned multiple times, caught and warned, and spoken to by the school, then me, and told that further incidents would result in an arrest. It's technically arrest, but it's basically setting that child to court to face whatever expectations they have for it. It could be a program, or it could be a fine. Excuse me, the ones that went to diversion, 2 of them were related to alcohol possession, 3 were drug possessions, actually 4 of them involved drugs, 3 were drug possessions, 1 of them was drug sales, and 1 was criminal mischief. And again, these are all, a couple of, the majority of them are pretty serious, but the diversion program is excellent because it gives us a chance to sort of give them another chance to correct their behavior and move forward in a positive direction. So again, none of those went to court officially. Before we move on to sort of what we do together, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, Jessica.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand one piece of the data that I think you explained, but I just want to make sure I'm interpreting it correctly. So the arrest data, it is that chart refers back to the adult arrest court referral for quantity on the preceding page, I think, correct?
Yep.
And so it's, in this data, it's 3 students who were arrested out of the 4 arrests that were made.
Correct.
3 of them were students and 1 was a non-student.
Right.
But it was related to student interaction, so that's why it's included here. And the 3 students who were arrested, 1 was over 18, so we're calling them an adult student, but then the other 2 were juvenile students.
Correct, and they're basically issued, for those types of offenses, they're issued with their family. It's a 3x5 summons. It's not like come into the police department, get fingerprinted, and have your photo taken and that. It's very simple. This is what you're charged with, here's a court date, explain it, answer all the questions of the parent, and then they have a court date.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
MJ, go ahead.
So just going on with that, so I guess when I looked at this, which I think you touched on a little bit, but I missed the finer points, it seems a little weird that someone got arrested for vaping but not for drug sales. So is there in my mind, that's a little less serious, but is there a diversion program if you were vaping, or is it an automatic arrest for vaping?
No, you can do diversion for vaping, but the family has to voluntarily sign up into that program. So if they refuse or they don't outright just say we're not doing it, whether it's a refusal or they don't meet that demand. So any of those children who had gone to diversion failed to meet the requirements of diversion, it would have been referred back to court. So since that family wouldn't even take up diversion services, we couldn't offer it. And then when the child continued, it was like, well, next time you're going to face, you're going to have to go to court for it.
So
But it's a violation level, so it's like a speeding ticket. It's not an actual, as if we think of an arrest. It's hard to explain a little bit.
So are most juvenile offenses eligible for diversion if the parents agree?
Yes, pretty much everything. Yeah. Actually, the state, we were sort of ahead of it in Lebanon, but the state has now said that you pretty much have to tell them, give them a valid reason why you would not want to divert something. It has to, meet a certain standard. Otherwise, everything has to go through diversion. We've even had kids pretty much fail diversion, go to the court, and then the judge says, well, you have to try again. So it's hard. And I get it, but it could also be very difficult on a kid who now this incident happened so long ago and it's been dragging on forever, and they're thinking about it and dealing with it as well.
I have a question about that, about the drug possession, drug sales, and vaping. Where are these things taking place? Is this on school property that we're talking about, or is this because they're students, or is this somewhere else?
The drugs specifically were on school property. Two of them came from sort of this, actually no, that was one incident. But it's basically possessing drugs through, typically it's THC, sometimes one of them was pills, one of them was THC. Actually 3 of them were THC, and one of the incidents was pills. So at the higher level, no elementary, I think 1 middle school and 3 high school.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So we all know that there's more going on in our schools than what you're making arrests for. So how do you, so in order for arrests to happen, do you personally have to witness the offense, or is it somebody within our school district is saying this is happening and then an arrest is happening? And how do you determine who gets arrested if we know that there are other kids vaping on school grounds, using marijuana on school grounds, like who gets arrested and who doesn't?
Yeah, and that's part of also, I think, why, we heavily push, and the state has pushed the diversion program, because sometimes it does come down to, 20 kids are doing it, 10 of them got caught, and it's like, oh, you got me, but, and so for it to be an arrestable offense, there's different ways. I mean, if I do witness something, I could act on that, and it could be an arrest if there's a criminal violation, but typically the way it works is potentially, or most often, an administrator will conduct a search for whatever reason. They have reasonable suspicion that's led them to conduct a search, which has then found that drug or that paraphernalia or whatever it is, vape, which then they've brought me in, because by law they have to report certain things. And then we take, the school still has their consequences or whatever they want to do in their investigation. I take it and I do the police investigation, and I get statements and everything. And if it comes to that level, sometimes it might just be a warning. Other times but we want to be consistent. That's the thing. So it has to be a consistent response. But I just have to, if I've witnessed statements or I've witnessed it, then I get that probable cause, which then I have to put before justice of the peace that basically apply for a warrant. And then if they think there's probable cause, then I can get that arrest warrant signed. And then we contact the family and figure out how to best manage it at that point. So, but for most of these, again, they did go to diversion, so it wasn't, and again, these aren't, like I hesitate to say arrest because everybody assumes the worst, like handcuffing, pulling people out of school or whatever. That may have happened, I don't even think it was in handcuffs, but I think there may have been 2 school-related type arrests like that since I've been doing that position, so it's not what you see on TV all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
So of the services, and this is, so this question is sort of like, of the services that you've provided, which ones of them do you feel are like true services needing to be provided by a police officer? It's a tricky question.
Yeah, no. Truancy too, I think, when it gets to the level of involving the police, like I don't go initially, there's the calls home, there's the letters, there's, I think I'm maybe the 3rd step or so, and then it would be DCYF. So it's sort of this wraparound approach. Juvenile problem calls typically are when kids are being disorderly or unruly, or however you want to say it, and staff are getting to the point where they're worried about safety of that child or other students. Those are probably the most often. And then when there's criminal acts completed, something's damaged or there's a theft or an assault. And sometimes, simple assaults don't have to be reported by law. So sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. And that's where it gets a little fishy. But even then, sometimes we still don't pursue charges depending on, we've talked to the kids, we've talked to the families. It's, kids entered into a fight together. We're not looking to get kids dragged into court, that kind of, or diversion even for that. If they do it again, maybe, or if it was real egregious, somebody got seriously hurt, that's different.
All right, so let's go into your last part of your presentation, your interactions together.
So this was a little tricky. The data is to the best of our ability. I will say that because we were not necessarily keeping track of every interaction that we had or reasons why. But from the best of our ability, we have figured out that together we have served about 22 students, and the breakdown of those. So the middle school was the highest. So this is kind of the reasoning for any communication we had. Because I wasn't tracking directly with Greg, he could pull anything that we did together from his stuff, so this is his words. And so the next page kind of goes into detail about that. Most of our work together was truancy related, or home visits for mental health or other reasons. A lot of kind of what we did together for safety when I'm going to homes, he's with me. He provides additional information about how to support families that I can't provide. A lot of them have questions about, well, if my kid keeps refusing to go to school, what can I do? How can I do this? And so Greg is able to provide that information from the law perspective that now that I've learned, could provide some of it, but it's definitely really helpful for him to have that point of contact. I have a lot of families who say, my kid's hanging out with this kid, what can I do? Like, they're not good together, how can I support them? Can I file restraining orders? Can I do those things? And I'm like, I don't really know. And I will often refer them to Greg.
I could just talk about sort of the explanation of the call identification. Again, I understand it's again, not super specific, so you're kind of probably wondering, like, what is exactly a SIS school district? So these are the specific reasons that are shown on the left in those numbers that I had reasons to work with Miranda here. So the BTAT is Behavioral Threat Assessment team that we had formed to do one of those. And we hadn't had anything in place. We were kind of trying to build a system. So that's a goal for this year, is to get an actual organized system in place. And it's been difficult. We did work with Secret Service, but we wanted to work with the Department of Homeland Security, because they have a team that will come out and help educate and teach around it. And they actually put it on hold because of the Attorney General's office in New Hampshire was like, whoop, hang on, we want to make sure this is juvenile information. There's a lot of confidentiality. So we weren't able to work with them. So that's kind of what we've been delayed, or why we've been delayed. But those anyways are the sort of specific reasons last year that I helped with Miranda regarding those 3 topics.
What is relayed juvenile?
Yeah, I wondered too.
So, yeah, sort of. So it's basically transporting. So if it's a school resource, it's basically a child doesn't have a way to get home for whatever reason. Either the parents can't be contacted. We've had to take kids home. Again, can't get a hold of the parents. If the kid says the parents definitely there 100%. And so I've driven those students home. Kid missed a bus. Parent called and asked if we get the kid home. When it's under the juvenile problem, that's because they're being disorderly and they're being told they need to leave school, and we can't get a hold of a parent, or a parent doesn't have transportation is generally what we run into, so there's no easy way to get them home. And I think there's only one person currently in the school district that really has that insurance, and if she's not available or it's not her school, then she can't do it. Or if it's unsafe, we're not gonna have her do it, so.
So from what we calculated, we did about 21 home visits together. Most of those were truancy related or welfare checks because kids haven't been to school and we can't reach anyone. And then, that's kind of 2 different things. So like truancy, they're not coming to school, we can't reach anyone, nobody's home. And then like the parents are calling, telling us the kid is refusing to come to school. So kind of separating those. And so we were trying to figure out who initiated kind of the contact. And so most of them were me for safety stuff. So for the home visits and such. Greg and I both, if he learned something that happened after hours where, there was an event at night that a family was involved in a domestic violence situation or something, they will ask the family, can we let the school know there's resources at the school? Can the social worker call you? So a lot of that stuff was what was coming from Greg. And then we broke this down into the number. So we have the total number of students that we supported, but then the number of communications. So the middle school was our highest this year. And I think it's really helpful to have a wraparound approach when we're supporting our kids. It's not always easy. The families that are accessing our resources for kids who are having behavior problems or who are, have been arrested and things, having this complete wraparound care for them that the SRO can refer to me, I can refer to him, really allows us to have the best support for our kids. So it's really helpful when I need to go do a home visit. As fabulous as our administrators are, they don't have as much time. So home visits end up being rushed and we don't always get the information that we need, and families don't feel supported because because we're trying to leave and we haven't really gotten through what we needed to do. Where when Greg is able to go with me, there's more time allowed, and we're really allowed to work through those things. He provides that safety piece for me so that, you know, I'm making sure that I'm walking into safe places, but Greg does a really great job of kind of, you know, stepping back when I need to be the one having the conversation and coming in when he's able to provide additional support. And so I think that team approach is really helpful in making our families feel like we all want to see them succeed. And they, from what I witnessed, they all recognize that Greg is there to be an additional support and another person in their corner to get their kids hopefully on a good track. So.
Thanks. Does anybody have any additional questions?
I have
Yeah.
two.
Okay.
So first one is sort of, I guess they're both for Greg. So when you're talking with students, and especially when you sort of are tipping into more of the legal kind of thing that they've done something wrong, how do we ensure that their rights are protected because they're juveniles? So do we bring their parents into the conversation? Like,
So-
where's your...
So I won't talk to a student about something like that without the parents already giving permission. And we always say, you know, you're welcome to be there. You know, it's up to you. It's just a conversation. So it's not. Are you talking about? I think it's two different things because it sounds like.
Yeah, I
you
mean,
might be
I'm
thinking
assuming
if
you
there's an
have
actual crime committed or
yeah, like
investigating something.
when there's something that's going to either send them to diversion or to some other
Right.
kind of, you know, when it's more of a legal thing versus like you're just checking in on them.
Yep. Typically, so I won't even engage the child in conversation until that parent has been notified. And typically the parent will come in and respond because a lot of the incidents result in that student having to go home for the day anyway. But typically, yeah, a lot of them want to be there. Sometimes they don't. I think more nowadays than ever they want to be there, which I
Yeah.
completely understand. So yeah, we always give that, and then it's always at the very beginning of the discussion. If there is actually a crime being investigated, it's, you know, you're not under arrest, you're not, you know, in police custody. The door's shut for your privacy. You're free to leave at any time, and we talk, you know, make sure the parent and the child understands that before we move forward with anything.
And then the other thing, you didn't talk, or I'm not seeing it in the report, but I'm assuming that you must be part of our emergency response team. So how much time do you spend talking about those things if something were to happen?
Yeah, one of the things, I know what you're talking about. I'm sorry, I was gonna say,
That's
one of
okay.
the things that falls under school resource a lot too would be like school safety committee meetings. I'm also JLMC, I work with the district on that. But it depends on the plans in the school and how on board that administration is regarding the emergency planning. So in the past, you know, I started with the school district when we got sent to the training down in Concord initially. And then we all worked together to develop the EOP plan. And then there's the school specific annexes, I guess you call them, or whatever, that we try to look at. It depends again, like some schools, as you guys know, Jack was a sort of
Safety guru.
Guru, that's a good way to put it. I'm like trying to think about a polite way to put it, like safety guru. So he was always pushing it and talking about it, whereas, you know, Ian's more relaxed when it comes to that sort of a thing, you know, so he's not constantly talking about it, but also I think that fell more to the assistant principal at that time. So it depends, but yeah, anytime. I know I just, the other day, the director of facilities and I walked around the construction, and both of us evaluated where we thought we could come to an agreement on what the best location for cameras would be, because he wants to add cameras, and then he relayed that to the construction people. So yeah, pretty much anything, but anytime. Yeah, and it's sometimes it's just little pieces as well. As I learn of them, is sort of like, God, I'm trying to think of the word. It's been a while since I used it, but gosh, I want to say safety corners, and I can't think of the term, but basically, like, you know, you can look in a classroom. Most of them have windows. At what point, if somebody was trying to look through that window, would you be out of sight? So you can tape down that area so that every student, should something really bad ever happen, knows that if they're beyond that point, they can't be seen. So little things, or how to properly secure a door if you don't have an automatic, you can buy all this stuff, but if you don't have it, how else could you do it, like with a belt or whatnot? And that's one of the things actually we talked to the superintendent about, is trying to educate the school community on what to do in these emergency situations. Should it be, active shooter or hostage, whatever. But we do have a plan through the police department where we train. It's called Praise, and we've been doing it throughout the community with different public and private organizations.
Any other questions for Greg or Miranda, or them both? All right, thank you so much for your time and for the data. We appreciate it, and for all you do. Appreciate that. All right, so that moves us on to the SAU leadership team update, superintendent's update.
Sure. I am going to start with information from Karen Du Bois, who could not be here. She asked me to share a brief update about our planned use of ESSER funds in this current year. As you know, 20% of our ARPA ESSER 3 were earmarked to address COVID-related learning loss. Our district initially allocated these funds to the K-8 Math Resource Pilot and Adoption Program, Eureka, that was implemented last year into this year. We're pleased to share that the initiative came in under projected costs, so we have additional ESSER funds to put forward to curb COVID learning loss initiatives. We have to spend 20% of this. Tim's looking at me. If we don't spend it to learning loss, actually we could have to reimburse the 80% we did for construction. So, following,
We're spending it. What are we spending it on?
so we're going to have it spent.
It's a shopping
I must have
party.
tuned that part out.
So it does need to be spent and implemented, I believe, by September 30th of 24. So following the success of the math pilot and the adoption of the program, we plan to implement a similar review and adoption process for some early literacy curricular resources. The New Hampshire Department of Ed is supporting schools in implementing evidence-based practices in literacy. They've provided training to teachers throughout the state of New Hampshire in LETTERS program. A lot of our teachers have done that training on their own and have directed schools to implement a comprehensive literacy screening protocols, which I will talk about in my update. Early data that we've received shows that we definitely need a systematic sequential evidence-based early literacy instruction for grades K to 3, and we need to get some extracurricular resources. So we are convening a committee soon to look at literacy programs and make recommendations for piloting with a goal of implementation of fall of 24. This committee is also going to assess our existing K to 6 ELA resources to make sure we are having the most successful programs. So we are going to use our ESSER funds that were left over from the math implementation, which is roughly about $90,000, to equip our K-2 classrooms with decodable texts and address any learning related losses with our older students. So we did seek input from Ian and Colleen as well, but that most of it will be purchased to equip those classrooms with decodable text. Any questions about that? All right, we will have it spent. That's the big piece.
Not a problem.
We don't have a problem spending.
All right. So just a brief update. We do have a new reading screening law that was adopted by New Hampshire. So this mandate is requiring all kindergarten students through grade 3 to undergo a screening and follow-up. So parents of students who are going to be requiring additional assistance during the school hours are going to be notified via letter. There's my accent there. So we do have that early screener data, and our school has, both schools have worked really hard to make sure those screenings get done. So we are on track. I just wanted to update the COVID-19 communications. As you saw in my newsletter, it went out. So I'm just going to read this for our community as we continue to have several students and staff out with COVID. So our dedication to our students and staff's health and well-being remains unwavering. The school district nurses continue to advise that individuals displaying COVID-19 symptoms such as fever, runny nose, cough, sore throat, or headache should consider undergoing a COVID test. We do have current COVID tests in our nurse's office. So if a parent wanted them when they were picking them up, they could get them. If they have a positive test, we're requesting that you contact your school nurse for guidance. And according to those guidelines by CDC, individuals who test positive for COVID-19 are advised to isolate themselves for 5 days and then return to school wearing a mask from days 6 through 10. So this message will be continuing to be shared out with our community and our families. So just a few updates from our schools. Lebanon High School, you heard tonight from our student rep, the success of the homecoming dance, and we're excited to have the bonfire this Friday night. Principal Smith told me it starts at 7, so all people are welcome.
And what modifications are they making given all the construction?
Yeah. Tim, do you know where, they are moved it over to the side field, right, for the bonfire?
I don't know, I'm kind of a little hands off. I don't know, I mean, I know that Steve was working with construction with our, and the fire department and stuff as to where to put it. So I actually don't know where they
The
moved it.
biggest piece that I heard that's being relocated is the Project Grad location where they had, so excuse me, I've never been to a Lebanon bonfire, so I don't have the contextual knowledge, but that's being relocated.
Okay.
Out
Now,
there.
the other, just from my past experience last year,
Yeah.
there were a lot of middle school students roaming pretty freely in dark spaces.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't good last year, but it definitely will not be good with
No,
lots of construction happening.
Absolutely. I actually heard that as well too. So I'm going to actually put a notice out just on Friday to all families. If you're coming, please supervise your children. It's a great event and community event, but we want to make sure we have safety first.
And I don't know if it was true last year, but sometimes we've had the lights on the football field, which illuminates a lot of that
Right.
space back there.
I was going to say, we
Also
usually
may
leave
be
those lights
helpful.
on, yeah. I mean, we'll try to connect with Ian. I'm sure Ian is well aware of these dangers, but I just want to reassure everybody that the construction areas are completely fenced in and locked. Obviously for things like that, but obviously the contractor has they have liability with that too. So if someone gets in there, obviously they're doing wrong, but they're also climbing like an 8 to 10 feet high fence,
Yeah.
It's like,
I think sometimes there were people running around on the utility field and stuff like, I mean, we're not
Yeah.
gonna stop all of it, but there were definitely kids in places that
Shouldn't have been.
weren't ideal.
Mount Leb School, so in the coming weeks, they'll start their Artist in Residence program. This was sponsored by their PTO, and an artist will come to collaborate through students in grade K through 4 to create a mural, and they're going to start doing this in art classes in October. Hanover Street School, they have launched their drama club program and implemented our Finding Our Stride running program. So finally, an update from Lebanon Middle School. On Friday is Unity Day. They're excited to revive this tradition of Lebanon Middle School. On this day, each team will engage in a series of activities to do team building for both students and staff, and their overall goal is to foster a sense of unity around the teams. These are the locations. So our Pine team is going to be at Lebanon Middle School with our Birch team. Our Spruce team will be over at the SAU building on the Civic Field. Maple team is traveling down to Camp Conistant, and the Oak team is headed to Hughes Park in Enfield. So in addition to all these great things, I've been meeting with our building principals to review their goals, and I believe next week we'll have our first district-wide PTO meeting with all schools that have a PTO at the district office. So other projects that we have been working on, we are exploring a plane build opportunity for Lebanon High School. So we've been asked to apply for an RFP to have a plane being built at Lebanon High School for our students, which we are awarded. We'll get to build a plane for 4 years. So
Wow.
Wendy wants to fly.
Yeah.
It's great. We actually had this program in Manchester, and it's pretty remarkable. They take this and then they go from the whole building, the electrical piece, into painting and putting the siding on, and then pilots go up and take it to fly, and then that plane is sold, and then that proceeds go back to kind of fund
That's
the
very cool.
program. Other considerations is becoming a HiSET test location. We had recently met with the Department of Ed to learn that our local area in Claremont with the HiSET testing lost their grant funding this year, so there is a gap in services for HiSET testing. So we are going to have a meeting with the high school, the Department of Ed, and Deb Laffin, who does our adult early literacy program, to see if this would be an ideal situation for our high school.
Can you tell us what high?
It is a high school equivalency test.
Okay.
Yep. The state actually offers the HiSET, or we're bringing back the GED. We would actually pursue, if we were going to do anything, to have that HiSET location. Also looking at policy and review, we have a big task ahead of us. Tim and I are starting our budget planning, and we have reviewed our SAU leadership team goals. I did have an ask of them to have a common thread of customer service, so how we best can serve our schools and our students. So looking ahead, my plan is to give you a review of my entry plan on the October 11th meeting.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Amy? I have a quick one about the screening.
Yep.
What were the, just sort of generally, results? How did that work out?
Well, you'll see this in the plan for my reentry plan. So I think we identified more students than we anticipated that needed services. So you will get those results in EC, but a part of that, and then we will go in and provide interventions, and then we have to go in to rescreen. We use the same screening tool that we've used in the past because it meets the dyslexia law screening tool. I would say that it's probably not the best tool to use for there, but for this year we have to make sure we get this done. We will be making recommendations to change the screening school, but this will give us some data so we can start working with students and giving them the additional supports they need.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. So that leads us to business administrator's update. Tim?
Good evening. I guess I'll just take a second just to remind you of the adult ed thing. It's not a significant piece of our budget, but a number of years ago it came up, and the board authorized $15,000 in the general fund to, for lack of a better word, subsidize the adult ed. It's only relevant because Amy just mentioned the HiSET thing. So the state adult ed is a kind of a weird beast, and it's obviously not part of our core mission, but the state a number of years ago changed how they do the adult ed funding, and they broke the state up into regions. And the Southwest region, well, it's not named Southwest, but our region basically goes from us right on the Hanover line down through Claremont, and everybody used to do their piece, but then the state made these regions, and we had to team up, us and Claremont, whatever. We teamed up, we made a presentation. They were going to do some pieces of it, basically what they were doing, and we were going to do our pieces. And the dollar amount for both of those that they authorized wasn't enough, so that's why we ended up putting in money, and Claremont put in a lot more money. That was, like, believe it or not, 5 years ago, I think, and I don't know what's happened in Claremont, but they've had staffing issues, and basically their program is falling apart. So organically, the state has actually shifted a lot of those functions to us with the requisite state funding. So we're not putting any more money in, but the program is way different than it was 5 years ago, including, at the time, all the HiSET stuff was, we basically ran like a foreign language sort of.
Early literacy.
Yeah.
Foreign.
And all the HiSET stuff was really done there. I know we sent some, or, you know, if someone dropped out of the high school, they used to be referred down to Claremont. Well, now, I mean, we're kind of doing all that stuff here locally now. So that's kind of good, but it's a little frustrating because that's not what the deal was 5 years ago, but we're picking the pieces up for the state. So, my budget thing, I just want to know that the cover form, I just double checked. I did submit a cover form, it just didn't make it into the package, so. I didn't say anything other than these are the slides, basically. So chapter 2, and again, I just followed last year's process, so this is not intended to be all-inclusive, but give you some ideas of what is coming up in the budget, things like that. As we put the budget together, we have no negotiations this fall, so a lot of times the budget has got some flat numbers for one of the unions because we're doing negotiations. This year, all the unions have raises already in them, so you will see the para support staff, which is para custodians and maintenance. There's a 5% increase to the grid.
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
Then? So if it's not, when we get our binders and we have the numbers to compare,
Mhm.
do you put the numbers that were approved back in so that the increases don't look crazy?
Yes, I fixed that a couple of years ago, but I would say that we have added several staff. I have to get the exact number before budget time, but somewhere north of 10 paras since budget time last year.
Okay.
So what's in the budget that you'll be comparing that will be this year's approved budget numbers, which includes those raises from the contract,
Yep.
against what is actually our staff this year. So say, for example, there was 12, well, go easy, 10, say there was 10 pairs in a building. They got a raise. The number that you'll look at for the approved for this year will be those 12 with their this year rates after the warrant. But maybe we actually hired 15 because we needed 5 more. The number you're going to compare it against is going to be 15 paras, even though there was only 10 in the budget last year. And so you will see some buildings. I've done Hanover Street and I've done Mount Web. Hanover Street, surprisingly, wasn't anymore. So maybe sometimes in my brain I panic about how much money we're spending. But I really think we're going to see it at the middle. I'm doing the middle school and the high school tomorrow. So I hope that makes sense. We're comparing last year's staff budgeted at this time last year versus this year's staff actually hired. And so the difference is whatever IEPs were needed after budget was approved, those will be in the budget this year. And every year we have to pay for the staffing that's approved by IEPs, even though it's usually a number greater than what you approved during the budget time.
So to stay on that, or normally though, if a position is vacant at the time budgeting is done or was approved in the budget, you would carry it as a
Correct.
vacancy and still carry the line. So these are only
Additional,
unknown
right.
positions that were mandated by something else
Right.
that you had to add. Okay.
Right. Last year, right, so last year we had a lot of vacancies, but they were in the budget that you guys discussed. I usually leave a name in there just so I don't lose position. And then the principals get frustrated because they're like, this is a new, I'm like, I need to know who's replacing. And this year I've seen a lot of new, that's what I'm talking about. So,
On Monday during EC, Karen's going to present some of the shifts and needs of the district for the special ed, so I think you'll be able to get a bigger,
I want to copy
better
those slides. If they are, can I have a copy? So the LSS last year, you'll see another slide, but it went up quite a bit last year. This upcoming year, there's a 5% increase. LEA is a 2% increase. It's not LSA anymore. It's the Lebanon Administrative Assistants Association, LAAA, I guess. They don't go by percent. There's $1 per hour increase. And the lag, I didn't put it on there, but they're 2% in their contract. This is a slide it's getting smaller and smaller, so I'm going to have to drop some of those old years off to get it on here. But going all the way back to 15 and 17, there's a beginning those are beginning years of a particular contract. So I went back to an even contract. So I just wanted to show you that since 2015-16, the budget through the year end now, not counting, we're going to be budgeting, believe it or not, 24-25. So 23-24 is what we're in right now. The budget has increased to $4.7 million. These are often calculated. So if you look at the warrant articles and it says in year 1 it's going to be this, year 2 is going to be it. So hopefully you understand that that's calculated based on the staff that is in the district at the time of negotiation. So you say the warrant article is going to go up 290. If you look at 16, 17, 297, 971. What it actually went up is really much harder to look at. This is the number that was on the warrant that it was going to go up at that time. So anyway, LEA went up 4.7 through this year, LSS 1.4 million through this year. And the only point of that, we started this a bunch of years ago, is to hopefully show the dedication to decent wages that you guys have made. I tried to put some notes in there, so like a couple of years ago, in that 16-17 year, there wasn't much of an increase, but they switched to the yellow plan, so that there was some net savings there. The yellow plan's a cheaper healthcare plan, for example. Okay, school care rate increases. School care is our main. There are basically 3 places you can buy health care for schools and towns in New Hampshire. School care is Cigna, Health Trust is Blue Cross Blue Shield, and there's one called New Hampshire Interlocal Trust that I'm actually on the board of directors for. That's Harvard Pilgrim. It's a much smaller trust, but they're trying to build their. So we have our main one that we use is school care. We use that for all the teachers. We use that for all the support staff, and just about everybody in the SAU gets a different school care plan. So these are the increases that have gone back since 15-16. You can see that between 16 and 23, the budget increased by almost $1.3 million just in healthcare costs. I must be Nostradamus, I guess, because I put in there that I'm going to budget 10%, and I got an email an hour before this meeting saying that, from school care, saying, they usually give you actual rates, so by the time you get your binders, the actual increase will be known, and I will have made that change. But they said for planning purposes, you should use 10%, so we're right on track on that. So as you're going to your meetings with your meeting with your school level teams in October, you'll be seeing 10% increases. I'll have hopefully a much lower number by the time I hand out the binders, but I won't have it by middle of October. I didn't cover Health Trust. I mean, well, there's one place later I think it shows up, but Health Trust is a really small. The only people that have Health Trust, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield, is the Administrative Assistants Union. So things that are affecting the budget, obviously we have to put the negotiated increases in there. Retirement is usually one that every 2 years, the New Hampshire retirement system, they give you a new rate and what your percentage is. We're in year 2 of the rate, so the percentages haven't changed. Obviously, there's still an increase because it's going to be 19% of a higher salary, so those higher numbers will be in there. And for utilities, we don't, none of our campuses have fuel oil. The SAU still has fuel oil, but that's the only place. We enter in a contract with Irving every year for the propane, which is really quite low. I think it's like $1.30 this year, so it's real low. Water sewer, we're gonna budget a 10% increase unless the city gives us a lower number, but that's typically what we see.
Didn't we say that we were gonna exchange that for the rent?
TBD, to be determined. Electric is always a big deal. Obviously, electric is a big expense. As you know, we have solar at 2 of our buildings, and we have an electricity broker that we deal with, and it's not exactly 12.5 cents. We actually bought a bunch at less than 12.5, and the rest at 12.5. But we have a fixed price through December of 2025, which I thought was every year we're kind of debating what to do, but I still think it's working out pretty good for us because I think another rate hike is coming. So we probably we'll budget at that. Basically, we'll add the 12.5 cents plus our distribution charges, and that's what we'll budget. Distribution does change as the PUC tells us to change it, but I don't know if we'll change it or not. If I do, I'll let you know. Unknowns. Well, I don't know. I mean, unknowns is about the wrong title. Like, healthcare increases we're going to go up 10% and 18%. It's known but not known because the actual hopefully will be less than that with school care. Health Trust, they don't give you an actual rate. I'm going to budget 18%, and I say they're going to give me what they call a guaranteed maximum rate, and I'm hearing that it might be in the 18 to 20% range. So that rate. And a lot of districts are in this because a lot of people use Health Trust for their main thing, and they don't give you an exact rate. They give you a guaranteed maximum. You have to budget that whole maximum. When it comes in less, you have tons of money left, which is good but annoying. So I don't know retirements and track changes. Staff have until November 1st and December 1st respectively to put those in. The other thing is staff changes. Right now, we're in the period of time where the schools are asking for the moon. So they have to get through Amy first, but that'll be built in. So if we add a social worker, I'm just making that up, or we add whatever, that'll be in the budget you get on November 8th. This CIP, this is really just I guess the idea here is to show you what we operate with now. I cut off just the FY 2025 line, but we have in a big, huge spreadsheet that is on our website and has been shared with the board before, but you can see it on the facilities tab on our website. We have a spreadsheet of all the different things we try to track. We had a lot of this, I guess I just put it out there that we had a lot of discussion at Finance Facilities. We'll probably talk about in a little bit about maybe making this look different. So, typically this stuff, I mean, we go through this list, and if there's stuff on here like the classroom renovations, that's something we usually put in the general fund, and you guys either let us put it in there or take it out. But a lot of this stuff would be funded because out of a cap reserve fund or something. So just because it's on this list doesn't mean it's going to make it in the budget, even that I present to you. When I present you a budget, we'll present to you the projects from this list, or maybe it's not on the list, but came up, the projects in the budget. I'll say at the high school, this is what we want to do, this is the cost, and you'll see it on there. So this does drive the budget, but the way we use it right now is it's really visibility more than anything else. It's not like this is definitely going to be in the bottom line.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
About this? So in it, you have the construction, the parts of the construction project at Mount Lev that weren't included with the project that's just finished, but we don't have the pieces at the high school and Hanover Street.
We probably do. I would have to, again, I went in there, well, maybe not. I mean, this is actually, hasn't really been looked at since last October. And if it's in year 26, for example, on our sheet, I wouldn't have included it here. I just chopped off at the 25. But we have to go see if it's even on there. It might
Yeah,
not
just
be.
so we
Because
sort
that
of have a
project was really
placeholder.
finalized after this was really last looked at in detail. We had as you might remember, we had no facilities guy for a while, and so we just kind of got going and moving on. And this, I didn't really pay attention to this for the last several months. It's just really more a show and tell than anything else. This is what we've been using, and we used it very religiously up until Dana left to sort of drive things. But again, it sounds like the board's going to really want a different sort of format too, which is fine. So
I just want to make sure that
we don't lose
have
sight of it.
a placeholder for those.
We've had, I told you, well, I mentioned it to you, but we've had several conversations, even with the architect, in the last few weeks about preparing for what else we might do with money from the project. Because every bit that we bonded and every bit we made interest on has to go to that project. So the bond.
Those pieces could come back in.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
great.
The bonded number included a contingency, as you might imagine, and so we've used some of that, especially for the alley for there. But so far, we haven't used the majority of it, and it's still early, but we still have to plan, because we have to, Paul knows that he needs to come back to you guys. Probably, I don't know if it'll be this fall, but sometime before spring, to talk to you about that, because, whatever you do has got to be wrapped into the project so they can finish it next summer.
Right.
So, probably next week I'll be sending an email or a Google Sheet or something. I got to get your schedules for when you guys come in, and that's always, it's not my strong suit. I could not be an administrative assistant, but I'll probably start the conversation like when are you guys available in that week after October 22nd, somewhere in there. So we'll try to, because I got to match your individual schedules with each other and stuff. So that's the goal.
I can show you how to do a Calendly, so they can sign up. Easy.
I was hoping you were going to say, I'll just have Lori do it, but that's okay.
I'd like to make sure that we have as many back and forths over email about that as we
Like that?
possibly could.
Maximum.
Yeah, a minimum actual number of email exchanges. That would be great.
So we're moving right along. Next time, we're going to hopefully talk about, well, I'll just look at area tuition. I think I should have that. I should have that by next meeting. That takes a lot of work too, but it's the DOE 25, I filed that. Finally got Amy all set up in my DOE system with the right stuff, and then we submitted that, and they always have some minor things that I have no idea what that number is, Tim, so I gotta move stuff around. That'll be filed tomorrow, and then that drives the area, and then you'll have to sign it, so I'll send up like a Panda doc for you to sign.
Any questions for Tim? No? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think my only thing is echoing what Wendy said. Just, we had talked about it in F&F last year. We always talked about it, but especially if we're still talking about it with the architects, we had those pieces, those whatever 4 pieces they were, and I would love if we had extra funds for those 4 pieces to get put back in, but I think.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be all 4.
No, it wouldn't be all 4, but it would be interesting to see which ones of those are dependent on other pieces and which ones would be easier based on the construction that's already happening. So that's great, as long as those conversations are already happening. Yay. Do you want to talk about?
Sure, that last page in your packet is the roof inventory that was not included in the finance and facilities packet. I know several of you thought it was very helpful, so I wanted to make sure the full board got that. Thank you.
So for those of you who've never been in finance and facilities, this is excellent because it lets us know when the roofs were installed and how long they were supposed to last and how long they have until they can need to be replaced, and then how long they can last beyond that. So it's just, for me, it was a revelation of, I never thought about roofs individually, so it was helpful to to envision how that works. And thank you to Steve for figuring this out for us. Okay. So unfinished business, so this is what Wendy brought up earlier. These policies that were tabled are actually just going to go back to finance and facilities. So they're just here because they were tabled. Sorry, they're going to go back to policy committee because we had moved them. So just for everyone who knows. Okay, and we are going to committee updates. So F&F met on Wednesday, September 20th.
Yes, we did. We finally met. Yay. Talk about back and forth on a date. I, too, don't have
I
strong...
loved that process.
I, too, don't have strong scheduling skills. Which, actually, I did not take notes well, so I was just conferring with Wendy which Thursday of the month we had agreed to. So, first and foremost, we have agreed to do the 3rd Thursday of every month through March, starting at 4:15 p.m. for F&F.
So the next one is October 19th.
But, okay, so then we went over the update on the MLS renovation project. We have the certificate of occupancy from the city with just a little minor punch list of things to do. There was some trees that needed to be replanted because they didn't survive the paving in the summer and all that stuff. So Steve is working on that. Tim is working on closing out all the ESSER funding on that for that project. And so basically we're wrapping that one up. We had an update on the high school and the Hanover Street School Foundation. Basically, anyone that drives by, they can see all of the band room is coming up, the classrooms, and then they're working on the back now on the cafeteria side. Everything is going well. We have engaged with someone to work in a clerk of the works light capacity. He is, Andrew Day, right, was hired. And he has been having meetings with all of the construction foremans and have been getting up to speed in all the construction documents and has been facilitating some meetings, so that is going well. And then we just had an update from Tyler about some Chromebooks that had gone out to bid for purchase. It had predated Tyler, the bid, and it came back, and it's for purchase of 340 Chromebooks, which was part of the annual replacement cycle, and we'll have more update during budget time about his replacement cycle plans. And then we had a long discussion on the roof inventory that's part of your packet, and basically we, as Tim alluded to, we asked to kind of almost bring the FIP into this similar format, maybe with some comments as up for some discussion, because this was very helpful. Knowing that when the warranty ended, but then there could be a replacement year and useful life that extends past the warranty, so it's going to help for budgeting purposes coming up. And then we had a meeting, a group came and asked for permission to fundraise on behalf of the Lebanon hockey team. And they're going to, we had a long discussion about fundraising in general on behalf and referred to our new fundraising policy that we adopted last year. At the end of the day, this is an independent 501(c) that is going to be fundraising for the hockey team to purchase things like ice time for captains practices out of season that aren't currently funded through the school. And they're going to call themselves something like Friends of Lebanon Hockey, but they're not going to be allowed to use our logo and likeness and say they're actually fundraising on behalf of the school, because that's not permitted per our policy. And then out of that, though, came that,
is that,
well, it was the likeness and the logo.
I don't know, because
I don't remember that.
I don't remember that, yeah.
I
no.
thought, but anyway, so it came out of that we actually need to have some more policy work around this. So policy has yet again some more homework to do this year. So more to follow on that one. And then
Can I just clarify quick that it's a booster club-like thing, they're not just a fundraising tool, though they will provide financial support, but not necessarily all their money will come through specific fundraising activities.
And they said they hope to, their vision is to do things like kind of connect better with the community hockey programs, whatever they are. So they did envision, I was just worried that someone's going to be out there raising money on behalf of Lebanon School District you guys didn't know about, but it's really a separate entity, just like a PTO kind of would be. Their vision is to help the Lebanon hockey team with ice time and stuff, but also, I guess it'd be a connection in the community, maybe get more kids involved in hockey, things like that. So really is its own thing besides fundraising.
right. And then, like I said, we just had a discussion about the capital improvement plan. And then finally, we had a quick little overview of the fire department has expressed interest in maybe leasing some space from the SAU building in the event that they have approval to build a new fire station. They're going to have some place to have some of their administrative offices while their new station is being built. So that was it. It was a busy meeting.
Thank you.
That's the genesis of Wendy's comment about the water.
Good plan. All right, policy committee.
We meet again we have our official meeting on Monday, October 16th, and the time is actually 8:15. We are discovering lots of things that need cleanup and a process. We're trying to work on a process to deal with our policies and stuff like that. We are having a workshop with Will from the New Hampshire School Board Association on Monday, the 2nd, from 8 to 10. And the policy committee will be there, but I think it's probably fine if there are other board members that are interested in attending that.
That's at the SAU.
SAU. I would assume it is not considered official meeting. It's more like a workshop or a non-meeting.
Yeah.
So,
Great, thanks. Education committee. We don't have to report because we had a meeting in between. Our next meeting is Monday, October 2nd at 4 p.m. at the SAU office. PNN is actually having a meeting. Have you guys?
Oh, I think that's on October 5th at 4 p.m. at the SAU office.
Okay.
Oh, not October 5th, sorry, it's Thursday, which is, oh yeah, it is October 5th, yeah.
October 5th, okay. October 5th at 4 p.m., thank you. Student Wellness Advisory Committee, their next meeting is Wednesday, October 4th at 3:30 p.m. at the SAU office. HACTC just met on Tuesday, September 19th. Mary, did you want to share about that?
Oh, there's lots to do. The first thing we did, we had a tour of their construction site. So they have a new dust collection system going in, and a trades classroom, a conference room, and a large multi-purpose room. They're all excited. They talked about enrollment, and it's been steady since 2020. They talked about new staffing. They have 3 new paras. They have a person, and the paras are generally there to help supervise kids, so for safety reasons. But they also hired a literacy integrationalist and a math one, a data and assessment integration list, which is really cool. I think what she did talk about was the literacy was more for writing than anything in those subject areas. The other really cool thing is that they received this, electric cars were all the rage, and instead of training kids to work on regular cars, they're going to have a whole new thing for electric cars. And they're one of the first centers in the country to get this new high voltage trainer, and it comes from the Netherlands, which is really cool. So that was exciting. So they're looking to the future and training these kids in their prospective careers, which is neat. The adult education program is growing, and they have a new dental assistant partnership with Dartmouth Health. The LNA Vermont Works for Women in Welding, there's a new classes for that. And they're talked about their goals for next year or for the year coming up. And these are all notes. Amy asked if we should present the notes, and I think because they're voted on in a separate place that we have to wait till, so we can pass those on when it happens.
Great.
The next meeting is November 14th.
November 14th.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Area committee is meeting on Tuesday, October 17th at 6 p.m. at Grantham Village School. The school district city task force is meeting next on Thursday, October 26th at 6 p.m. at City Hall. Future agenda items, board recommendations, or questions anyone would like to add to the agenda? Anything?
I would like to start talking about the SRO MOU next month.
Okay, great. Which makes sense because it is part of our budgeting season discussions as well, and it expires in February, so that's a good time to start talking about it. Great. Any other questions or additional agenda items for the future? Okay, important dates and district announcements. Our next school board meeting is Wednesday, October 11th at 6:30 p.m. here. And as part of that meeting, we mentioned this before, we're going to have once a month, we'll do a legislative update. And so just be looking out for more information from Tia and Mary in the packets about, or in email, whichever, about those things going forward. Oh, and Tia, do you want to tell about what happened at Hanover?
Yeah, I attended the Dresden-Hanover School Board meeting last night. They presented the PragerU statement that we had presented, and they are considering making a vote of support of our statement and creating one of their own. So.
And they're anticipating working together on
Working
future
together in the
statements, potentially.
future, especially for any future legislative pieces. Even if we come together and there's anything that we want to let policymakers know that we support, want them to maybe repeal anything like that, and kind of having a stance and trying to work toward collaborating with other New Hampshire school districts. Oyster River and Portsmouth is interested in collaborating, and there was some talk about maybe seeing Concord, Manchester, if there would be any sort of collaboration possibilities to work together, have a bigger voice together. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you for going to that meeting.
Yeah.
And for writing the statement. All right, so Steve's not here.
What are we
I'll
going
make
to
a
do?
motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn by Wendy, seconded by MJ. All those in favor? All right, meeting is adjourned.